pleasure to be here in St. Louis at Saxquest. I want to thank Mark right at the front for allowing me to come in and spend today with you all. So it's a pleasure. And for these wonderful musicians, please give them another round of applause. I must say, one of the things that can be frustrating as an artist is when people come to town, when someone from out of town comes into town, people come out to check them out. Check out your musicians while they're in town, or they leave town. Bring musicians in town, treat your local artists like they're stars, because they are. All right. So we started out with a piece by Charlie Parker entitled Opera Vive. And what I thought we'd do in this visit at Saxquest, I was here about 2 years ago now, right? And I thought we'd keep it loose. So we'll play a couple of tunes, like maybe 3 or 4 tunes, and we'll just talk. We'll just talk for the remainder of the time and see what we can do to promote the saxophone. If you notice when I'm in here, I'm always looking around. I'm clearly a kid in a candy shop. I mean, I think I have 20 saxophones, and when I come up in here, I'm looking for 21. So that was the blues, of course. We're gonna play. Let's play Blue Bossa. That's Kenny Dorham, right?
Sure.
This is a piece by the great trumpet Kenny Dorham. It's a bossa nova, more or less. It's entitled Blue Bossa. It's a blues also, but it's a different groove. Right up here. Set it up. So we're gonna play a waltz for you next, and I'm gonna play this clarinet. This is something like this is a piece from Fairy Tale Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. We gotta do something to keep us young. This is entitled Someday My Principal. it never ceases to amaze me. You know, people look at playing fast as difficult. But whenever I play a ballad, I end up perspiring the most. But it's true. Benny Golson once told me it's much more difficult to play a ballad because people can see between the beats. So you got to be willing to play between the music. So now that was a piece by Hoagy Carmichael entitled The Nearness of You. It's one of my favorite ballads. In fact, when it comes time to play the clarinet, I actually prefer to play ballads on the clarinet. I find it to be like my most expressive thing to do. I love to play more tenor too, but I like to play more clarinet the most. And we're going to play a piece by Sonny Rollins, then we're going to talk a while. And this is entitled Oleo. I like to believe Sonny Rollins is one of my greatest influences. Okay, and that was only about Sunny Rollins. So thank you all very, very much. All right. Well, you know, it's always good to talk to people. Musicians are always accused of having their back to people and being snobby and all this other kind of stuff, but we can actually communicate. So let's talk a little while. Anybody have any questions? Don't be shy. We all learn from the experience. Sir?
So do you work with the soprano sax instead of the clarinet?
Absolutely. I love to play soprano. You know, it's just the airlines have made it very difficult to travel. When I play with the Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra, I have everything out here. So I carry my flute, my piccolo, my alto flute, my E-flat clarinet, my bass clarinet, my B-flat clarinet, tenor, soprano clarinet, and I actually bring my alto in case I get a minute to practice, which never happens. I hardly ever get to play alto much, but I bring it all out here with me because, like right now we're at the what's the name of the theater we're at tonight? The Powell Theater, playing Wynton's piece entitled The Swing Symphony. And for the woodwind players, it's a lot of doubling. So on this show, I have 5 doubles out. I have tenor, soprano, B-flat clarinet, E-flat clarinet, and bass clarinet. We did a show recently somewhere. Maybe it was, I don't even remember what the show was, but I had 7 out. I think that's the most I've had out at any one time. And the biggest challenge with that is trying to keep the reeds wet. You know, even on this piece, I don't play the E-flat clarinet to the very last movement. And it comes in at high points. It's cold, you know, a lot of challenges with that. But, you know, I try to practice with my instruments side by side so I can try to make the changes. So doing it from sax to clarinet has become very familiar to me. Playing that flute like that, I still have challenges on that with the embouchure getting set because it's a different kind of muscle memory in the embouchure. But if you put in your, like that, I like to believe 10,000 hours, like Malcolm Gladwell say in the book Outliers. If you put in your hours on it, ultimately it becomes very familiar to you. And that's something James Mooney told me once. Probably those who saw me here last time, I'm being redundant now. Because James Mooney once told me there's no such thing as easy and difficult, only familiar and unfamiliar. The more you do something, the more you familiar you become with it. So it's about repetition and becoming familiar with what you're doing. So, question?
How do you travel those instruments?
Well, fortunately with Jazz at Lincoln Center, I have travel cases built, but I got my eye on these cases over here. Maybe I'm gonna leave with another case. I always leave with something box when I come here. But when I first joined the band in 1993 and I had to bring my tenor, soprano, and clarinet out, The gentleman who played in the band before me, one of the guys anyway, was Todd Williams, great tenor player from St. Louis.
I went to high school. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a little older than him. We were the same.
Okay, right, Todd. So, and I remember I was told the story that Todd was in Australia, and the airlines wouldn't let him take his tenor on the plane. He refused to check it, so Wynton had to buy a ticket for the tenor on the spot. You know, sometimes those tickets out there would be like $10,000. That's when they had hard copy tickets. You can see the price, $10,000 for a month. So he had to buy a ticket for it. So when I came on the road, I said, I'm not going to deal with that problem. So I had some custom-made cases for my horns where they all fit in. The first one I had made was for my bass clarinet tenor and bass clarinet tenor, soprano, and E flat and clarinet. Man, I had no idea how big that would be. And I had the road manager actually design it. I figured he would have an idea of the dimensions. It was literally from there to here. One side width was from there to here. It was about that tall. It was like a coffin. They broke a plane in Barbados trying to get it off. So I had to get that case cut down. Ultimately, I set it up or fitted it so that the tenor, soprano, and clarinet would fit in. But I always carried my clarinet. And then as we started having more demands for the doubles, I had a second case built that holds just bass clarinet and alto. And that worked out fine. Then the demand for the E flat clarinet came in. So instead of just carrying my flute all the time, I had a case that holds alto flute, piccolo, and C flute, and E flat clarinet. So I have 3 travel cases that I have that I travel with. And I actually have a set of horns that I leave in New York at all times, because I just got tired going back and forth. So some of my favorite horns I carry with me like this. I'll carry it, and for instance, I'm going to New Orleans to do a gig tomorrow. And instead of bringing equipment down there, they're going to bring that back to New York, and I just brought an extra tenor with me. And I leave a soprano at my mom's house. So I got horns all over the place, but it works out. That's how I kind of travel with it. I always say as a musician, if you're serious about what you do, you should have at least 2 of whatever you play. Or 2 of whatever you consider that you play. I have 2 batteries. You know, I have a Mark 6 with a little 8. Excuse me, and I have a Yamaha as a backup. But I don't play Barry anymore. So I'm too lazy to carry it. Truly too lazy. But I have at least 2 of everything. Mark and I would discuss that. I have a pretty good collection of Mark 6s at home. Tenors and altos.
Yeah, what's the practice regimen? Do you do scale patterns and the tune scale patterns or arpeggios?
You know, mine is a little different now. I mean, there was a time when I did a lot of scale practice and arpeggios, and I still kind of do it because it's important to go back to your fundamentals. So, you know, it depends on where I feel like my weakness is at on a given day. Like I'm always working on my hand position. Although I've gotten great compliments from it, I'm told that my fingers don't move too much when I play. I like to believe that they stay close to the keys because anything away from the keys becomes wasted energy. You know, so I don't want to waste any energy. It's like if you were filling your car up, you wouldn't stop every time you saw a gas station and empty the tank and fill it. You would try to maximize your energy. So I try to do the same thing. So I try to keep my hands in place. And a lot of that came about, I think, from playing the clarinet first. Because you have to have a good hand position to play the clarinet, because you have to learn to cover the rings. You can't be all over the place. You can't kind of cover it by the back of the plateau and all of that kind of stuff. You have to be right over the hole. So I like to believe that gave me some pretty decent hand position. And then I knew Eddie Harris pretty well. Great tenor saxophonist from, I think he was from the Texas area. I don't know where Eddie was from, but fantastic tenor saxophonist. He did some recording with Ellis Marsalis, who was a teacher of mine. And through knowing Mr. Harris, he would always tell me, when you're touching the saxophone at any point in time, you should be able to feel every key on the horn. So he had a great discipline for keeping his hand position straight. But he could really play fast. If you check out Eddie Harris, he was all over the horn. Altissimo, low register, everything. He had complete control of it. So I try to, use those things when I'm playing. In the back, yes, sir.
At this point in your life and your career as a musician, what are your goals or what directions do you see yourself moving in?
My goals, first of all, is always to play better. I find myself trying to play more of what I hear now. than more of what I practiced. You know, I try to, when I have an opportunity to speak to people, I try to relate it to real life situations, as opposed to an F7 in a Dorian mode or Mixolydian mode. You know, I try to relate it to things that people are dealing with. So for me, when I practice, I try to see if I can play what I'm hearing, because I feel like jazz improvisation and jazz is a language. And those who can actually, how should I say it? Those who learn the language can ultimately speak it better. It's like if I said, you know, doi tashimashite, hi. You know, unless you speak Japanese, you won't know what I said. I'm not sure what I said. I actually said thank you. You know, ohayo gozaimasu. You hear that every time you walk in a Japanese restaurant. Ohayo gozaimasu. They kind of sing it. You know, but in my travels, I always learned the foundations of the language, how to say hello, goodbye, thank you, you're welcome, good night, good morning, because people are much more willing to work with you when you're trying to learn a language, and not be the Americans who figure everybody should learn English. So I kind of try to meet people in that direction, but of course, it's difficult to try to learn all their languages. So when I'm dealing with jazz in this language, I'm trying to absorb the language to the best of my ability with the finite time I have on this earth. I try to listen to as much music as I possibly can. I'm a strong believer of tradition and history. As the saying goes, if you don't know where you came from, you can't know where you're going to. When somebody hears you play, they should hear the tradition of the music in you. And if they hear the tradition of the music in you, then no one have to wonder if you're playing jazz, unless they just don't know what jazz is. You know, so when it comes to people who are playing other things that are not swing or groove based, when you listen to a trumpeter or a saxophone player, when you listen to a trumpeter, ask yourself, do I hear Louis Armstrong? Do you hear a saxophone player, be it soprano or tenor? Do I hear Sidney Bechet? Do I hear Coleman Hawkins in their sound? And if you really hear it in their sound, then they probably are playing jazz. But many times when they're playing something other than jazz, you can never identify with them. So I'm trying to get stronger to the root of what is jazz. In fact, I teach at Northwestern University. And my question I've asked every one of my students, because Northwestern costs $50,000 a year to go to school. At the undergraduate level, it costs about $60,000, I think, at the graduate, I was told. So I asked one of my young drummers, who had done his undergraduate at Loyola, my alma mater, and he came to Northwestern. So I said, at the end of this next year, you're going to have spent almost $250,000, $300,000 on your education. He said, that's about right. I said, good. I said, what is jazz? He said, nobody ever asked me that before. I was like, how can you possibly have gone through an undergraduate jazz studies program? Nobody ever asked you what it is you're doing. How could you not have thought about it when you decided to dedicate your life to it? Now, there's no absolute answer. Somebody's going to come, for every answer I give you, somebody's going to debate it. I'm comfortable with that, but just come up with an answer that you can defend, that you can substantiate with some history and some documentation, then pull out recordings and some literature and everything to support your theory about what jazz is, and be honest about it. So that's what I'm trying to get the truth into the foundation and the meaning of what it is that I've decided to do, that I've been working on I've definitely been working on jazz since 1976 when I was a sophomore in high school, so that's 25 years right there. And I've been playing for 43 years. So by this time I should be trying to figure out what it is I'm doing. That's what I practice. So it's not, all in all, it's not about the scales and the rudiments. You know, I can put together a solo with one note, especially if I have a rhythm section who's in touch with me and who can interact with me, because we're actually having a dialogue together. You know, when I'm soloing, it's not just my solo, it's their solo with my solo. And the more I can interact with them, the better my solo is going to be. You know, the choices that we all make is going to only support each other. So that's what I'm trying to get at when I'm playing. Yes, I still work on the scales. My goal is to be technically as fluent as I can possibly be. But at the end of the day, when I finish, how can I touch somebody in a way that they haven't been touched before? Emotionally impact them in terms of the music. I'll put a period there. I can go on a little longer. Sir.
In talking about communication, I noticed when you came in, especially in that last song, making sure that the communication was exact. You had some changes or whatever else. What is your greatest obstacle to communication when you come in to do a clinic with musicians like this?
Well, when I come into a situation like this to do a workshop with these gentlemen up here, first of all, I have a confidence that we all have a common ground of language that we're dealing with. I have that first confidence because I know Mark provided me with a group of musicians who can play. That's the first thing. And then, if we would just call in tunes that I figured they probably would know. There's a set repertoire that's going to be there. And then after that, I'm feeling them out when I'm playing. So when we got to the end of Someday My Prince Will Come, which I never play on clarinet. That was the first time I played it on clarinet. I just felt like playing on clarinet today. I might not ever play it on clarinet after that performance of it. But toward the end, we started just vamping on the pedal point and the bass. And I played over the F7 concert sus for a while. And I was just waiting. I said, I'm going to wait to see if he start changing these chords around. Then I heard him go to like an E flat minor 7 over or the Phrygian sound on F. And then I said, okay, now I can experiment because I see where he's going to go at. I'm going to wait. Each time we got to a point where I figured he would change the chord, I waited just long enough to see what the sound would be before I got to it. And the other part is I have a responsibility to work on my ear. So when I hear, when he decides to play, first of all, he should have the confidence to be able to play something without only playing what potentially I may know. I have to broaden my palette of what I know in music. And then I have to have enough ear training and faith in what I hear to be able to identify what he played. I don't have perfect pitch, but once I'm in a key, I can hear where I'm at. I can hear when he started playing like flat 13th with a flat 9, like he would voice on Someday My Prince Will Come. He did the same thing in The Nearness of You. Every time we got to that E flat 7 chord, I was waiting for that 13 with a flat 9. I was like, that's my chord there. I could do that one. So there's some sounds that I can identify with. And then every once in a while, when somebody throws something else out there, I'm willing to experiment, take a chance and a risk. Because one of the lessons Wynton Marsalis told me when I was in a lesson with him is that in order to be a jazz musician, you have to be willing to make a fool of yourself. You have to be willing to take a chance. You can't play the same thing every time. Not even every 2 or 3 times. You have to be willing to take a chance. And that's how you get to something great, by making a mistake. That's how great discoveries were made in research. Someone might spill water on something. Oh, wow, man, check that out. Or whatever it may be. So it's not really an obstacle. Now we're just kind of familiarizing ourselves with each other to kind of see what we do, what we know, and how can we take that and move it to the next level. On the next tune we might play or something. Another question?
You played some fantastic classics. I really appreciate that. I'm wondering, I think they're all written at least 50 years ago. And I'm wondering if there's music like that that's been written more recently, or this is just what you knew everyone would know, and that's the reason.
Well, there's some great tunes that are written today that I don't know. There's so many musicians writing music daily, original compositions. But this is kind of like the basic repertoire of the jazz canon, what we call jazz standards. The things that come from people like Hoagy Carmichael and Jerome Kern and George Gershwin and things like that. Other jazz classics, things that come from Sonny Rollins and Wayne Shorter. Jazz classics are things that we call it that because it's written by jazz musicians, as opposed to other things that come from the Broadway musicals and things like that. There's so much music out there. There's a lot of bad things out there, but there's a lot of good things out there too that are written by all kinds of people. We have to remember that Billy Strayhorn wrote Lush Life when he was 16. So there's some 16-year-olds writing some great pieces out there somewhere. Somewhere we haven't heard it yet, but maybe we have, maybe we haven't. But there's a lot of good pieces out there that, I know some of them and others I like that you might not like, and vice versa. But there's a tremendous wealth of music. But I like to always be able to pull upon the classics, to know what it is in the standards, to know what they are, and let that become the foundation of the music that we're going to play. In fact, when I teach with my students, I make sure that we do 2 concerts of small group music every quarter. The first one is always about historical things. Like the first concert they did this year was called, what did they call, Sweet Honey Bee. I called it Sweet Honey Bee and Cornbread, because Sweet Honey Bee was a record by Duke Pearson. And so we did the music of Duke Pearson, and the music of Lee Morgan. They called him Cornbread. So, you know, and then the second concert will be originals, because my hope is that by studying those those classes by Lee Morgan and Duke Pearson, they would have taken something out of that to ultimately put into their compositions. I cannot be guaranteed. All I can do is present someone with an opportunity, and then it's up to them to be able to capitalize on the opportunity. You had a question?
Yeah, you talk about your approach to building vocabulary, maybe your approach to transcribing.
You know, it's interesting. My approach is a little different from some. You know, like someone asked Wynton the question yesterday, does he transcribe? He said he never transcribed. I actually know a time when he actually did learn the solo, but I didn't want to call him out on stage. He may not have written it down, but I remember he actually was playing John Coltrane's Countdown on the trumpet. It was so phenomenal that it influenced me. That was one of the first times I really heard Train. I was just floored by it. But some people say don't write it down because you never learn it. You know, I think you have to deal with what works best for you. And there's different reasons why you record things. You know, like I write mine down because years from now I might want to come back to it and check it out without having to go through all of it again and see actually what was written. Another reason why I write it down is in my graduate studies, I did a study of the music of Sonny Rollins, where I analyzed about 30 solos of his that I thought I might want to do a book about. You know, I didn't do the book, I still got the solos. You know, and I may want to go back to them and check them out. But I think overall, my recommendation, I do agree with a lot of what he said yesterday. When people learn to speak, they don't pull out a book on the history of English grammar and say, okay, I need an article, a pronoun, a verb, a preposition, another article, a noun, yada yada, to put together a sentence. They just start out by mimicking their parents, you know, in broken phrases and learning how to speak in whatever way they can to communicate. It's very organic. And then along the way, we start to put our things together so that we can formulate sentences that not only can communicate our message, but is grammatically correct to make our message very clear to the listener. So, and it evolves. So I think the listening part of it is first and foremost the most important thing in learning how to play the music. You cannot learn the music if you haven't listened to it. And you cannot learn the music by only listening to it on record. You have to get into a club. And you cannot learn the music by practicing by yourself 10 hours a day. You have to, okay, if you want to practice 10 hours a day by yourself, you can do that, but ultimately you have to get at least 1 hour a day with some other musicians. Because as soon as they step into your circle, they change the equilibrium in it. And you have to learn how to be able to respond to them and be able to interact with them and negotiate what's being said. It's just like being in a room and negotiating with somebody who is not on the same page with you, you know. You know, it's funny, I have to do a talk on jazz and democracy tomorrow in New Orleans. And I've been doing a lot of research on it. And it's just, in a democratic situation, you have to be able to iron out your differences with somebody. It would be great if we all were on the same page, but we often are not. So how can we exist together with our differences? Because at the end of the day, we actually have more in common than we have different, probably, from each other. And that's been one of my greatest lessons in recent times. Sir. And then I'll come back.
Who influenced you to both saxophone? Who did you listen to?
In my earlier days, I listened to a lot, like every other young saxophone player, I was floored by John Coltrane first. Then I became aware of Sonny Rollins. And those two, I did a lot of transcribing of their music. And it was through the guidance of Wynton Marsalis. He said, man, you have to really check out the history of the saxophone. So he started systematically in my lessons with him. I studied the tenor to the piano. I mean, that was the kind of lesson we had. It wasn't with a saxophone player, it was just the two of us, and we would play. And those lessons, and he exposed me to Lucky Thompson, and then Bill Webster, Coleman Hawkins, Leslie Young, Chu Berry, Bud Freeman, and it motivated me to try to learn as much as I can about the history of the saxophone, and then the history of everybody else's instrument too. You know, and in fact, when I was a teenager, with resources being limited, talking about money, I didn't buy a record unless it had a tenor player on it. I mean, that was just it. If it didn't have a tenor player on it, I couldn't buy the Ray Garland Trio because I needed to hear tenor players. So I bought records that had tenor players on it for the first 4 or 5 years till I had a record collection that I was proud of. Then I started adding those other things into it. Of course, I went to the library to check them out at school. But for my own collection, each record had to have at least one tenor player on it. Sometimes four, like in tenor conclave, you know, but preferably one, at least. So those were my influences. But now everyone influenced me because I realize everything I do can actually help me in a positive way. You know, I'll take any trombone players in the room. You know, there's a matter of fact, there's an exercise that trombone players do. I keep asking our trombone players what book is in, and they can never remember. But it goes. And it's just two triads. Just something about that sound I like. So, you know, that's from the trombone book. The other thing trumpet players always do is the Clark Technical Studies, because it helps them with their tonguing, with the coordination of their valves and all that kind of stuff, their fingering. But it can work on the saxophone too, because it creates different cross fingers than the universal method for saxophone. Things that are written for saxophones addresses some of the difficulties, but usually some of the conveniences too. So I figure if I take something from another book, then it won't necessarily have been written for me, and it might create some challenges, like dealing with the Hammond studies for piano. You know, and just seeing how that fits on the sax. Doesn't mean I'll ever use it, but it means that I'm trying to get around in different ways than I'm necessarily most familiar with. Trying to expand my familiarity with the saxophone or the clarinet or whatever it is I'm doing, the flute. You know. In the back of the question, sir.
It's a life question. Are you
Uh-oh.
married, and how do you manage your schedule, practice, and
Oh man, now first of all, let me preface that, okay? I think the music has nothing to do with interfering with people's personal lives, okay? Now I'm divorced. It had nothing to do with the music. I'm gonna stop there, okay? But I'm obsessive compulsive. When I decide I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it until I finish doing it, whatever it is. And it stems back to when I was a kid playing football. I had a coach named Mr. Felix. He used to always say, quitters never win and winners never quit. Which one are you? I don't like the sound of losing. So winner became my thing. So I always said, whatever it takes, by any means necessary, I'm going to follow this path that I'm going in. And at the end, when it's all said and done, when I close my eyes, I'm going to be able to tell anybody, and preferably I would love them to be able to see that I gave everything I could do to be the best that I can be. I have students who often say, I don't want to transcribe train, I don't want to sound like train. And I support them. I say, you know what? You're right. Don't worry about it. You won't. You will never sound like train. That would be impossible. Even on your best day, it would be impossible. You can never sound like that. So my life objective is to be the best I can be. And I think people can, I have many friends who are married and have kids and been in long-term relationships. I mean, one of the greatest pianists ever was Mr. John Lewis. He was married to, I can't remember his wife's first name because I never called her by her first name. I would call her Mrs. Lewis. And she was a classical piano player. Mr. Lewis obviously played jazz. He was the musical director for the Modern Jazz Quartet for 50 years. So I had the pleasure of knowing him, and I remember visiting his house. And I would often get a chance to speak to Mrs. Lewis. And I said, Mrs. Lewis, I see these two pianos next to each other. Did you and Mr. Lewis play quite often? And she was from Eastern Europe. She said, no. John and I never played together because we have different concepts of playing the piano. And his position was all wrong. But obviously there was a lot of love and understanding in that household because they stayed together until his death, And there are other great musicians in the history of jazz who stayed with their significant others and had personal lives as well as professional lives. But for me, the music is all one and the same. You know, it overlaps and it takes priority sometimes, but it's inconvenient. You know, I've missed so many events in my family's lives because I've been traveling around the world. But, you know, I had no idea that would be the case back in 1969 when I first started playing clarinet, you know. And I didn't start playing because I said, man, I'm gonna be a musician one day. I started playing the clarinet because I have asthma. And my mother thought that if I played the clarinet, it would help with my respiratory situation. And it, you know, it obviously, in some kind of way did. I think it did tremendous things. You know, it allowed me to do everything I wanted to do. It still continue to do that. That's my, don't judge the personal life based upon my track record. There are other more successful examples of relationships with jazz musicians. Other questions, yes, sir. I'm gonna come over here next.
Oh, yeah, I'm a new music teacher. Do you
Okay.
have any tips for teaching jazz to children?
Okay. First of all, I commend you. I celebrate you. Ironically, my undergraduate is in music education. But I thought for me, in order for me to do what I wanted to do, I couldn't be a music educator in that capacity at that time, because to be a band director, which is what you are, right? Is a 24/7, 365 job. That's why I applaud you. I really do. You and any other band director in the room, because that's a tremendous sacrifice and dedication. As far as trying to work with your kids on it, I think it's about exposure. You know, if you step into anybody's car and let the radio come on, most times you will not have the local jazz station on, if there's a local jazz station in town. So you have to expose kids to the music. You have to play things for them, because it's just like food, you know. We all have a friend who say, man, I don't eat sushi. And I said, well, why you don't like sushi? I don't know, I just don't like it. I never tried it. I was like, well, don't you think that's a little strange? No, man, I just don't like it. But in order to like something or even have an opinion about it, you gotta try it. So you have to expose them to it so they can actually have an opinion about it. Then I truly believe this next thing is really important as an educator. All the band directors I ever had played with me. They sat down and played. I remember my elementary school teacher was a guy named Alan Dejon. He had a brass band in New Orleans. He played a little bit with me, but when it came to junior high, he was a piano player. I remember him sitting down and playing in the band with us. My high school math and clarinet teacher, who I still keep in touch with 50 years later. We used to sit and play clarinet duets because I used to study privately with him. My high school band director, Mr. Hampton, he was a clarinet sax player too. He sat down and played duets with me. In fact, I remember one time we were playing duets and he didn't think I was serious. He said, look, man, let's just put the horn up. He said, you don't want to play today? I said, I do. He said, no, I'm concluding that you don't want to play today. I said, okay. He said, from now on, if you don't want to play, don't take your horn out. If you want to play, though, when you take your horn out, be serious. That always stayed in my mind. So the point is that, and Ellis Marsalis, of course, you know, I played in this band for 15 years. I mean, that's who I played in the band with before I joined Wynton's band. So they had that kind of profound effect on me of playing with my teachers. So I think you can influence your students like that by continuing to play with them and realizing that a music ed degree is not a certificate to only teach. It's still a certificate to play. You have to continue to play. And then the other part about music education, if you went medicine, you would be expected to go out and get further certification. You know, learn more about your craft. But in education, for some reason, teachers believe once they get their undergraduate or master's degree or tenure, that's the one, tenure, then they stop advancing their knowledge. And they just ride the wave into the sunset. You know, and that's where our education system begins to fail us. For instance, I'm not even hesitant to say, like in a jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra, we don't have tenure. So people say, you don't have tenure? Well, what's your tenure? I say, my tenure is the last concert, the next one I'm gonna play. If I didn't play well last time, I better play better tonight. Because I have an X amount of time. Tenure is job security in your field. Knowing that somebody won't fire you for reasons other than incompetence. Incompetence might be acceptable, but then that's based on an opinion too, unless your work habit is just so bad that across the board everybody say that person is not qualified. So, you know, sit there with your students, expose them to the music. Let them see the faces that made the music. Dexter Gordon, Lester Young, I think Charlie Parker right there. I see the white saxophone. Ornette Coleman. That's actually that's Eugene Russo, right? Yeah. Coleman Hawkins at the top. Cannonball Adderley, trained, of course. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see that far. We got Greg Osby up here. Is that I can't remember his name, the alto player. Is that Marienthal? Eric Marienthal on the wall next to Greg Osby? Okay. Okay. But James Carter, obviously, you know, and tons of people. Coleman Hawkins and Jared Mulligan on the upper right side over there. So try to put their faces with it. Also, if you can, expose them to the artwork that was important with the records. Like you see that award winner Stan Getz album up there, or you see Sonny Rollins in blue. You know, all that's the cover of Blue Train. The Shape of Jazz to come on that Coleman. I can remember what the cover of Someday My Prince Will Come by Miles Davis. You know, Feel the Kilimanjaro, or the one he did with Gil Evans, Special Sketches of Spain, orange cover with different things on it. Unfortunately, with the MP3 craze we have now, people don't have to read liner notes. They just get, they trade MP3s with their friends. So I ask my students many times, what did you listen to? They say, oh, I listened to some Train. I say, who's in the band? He said, the drummer. No, not the drummer, man. Which drummer? You know who played in the band, because unless Train was playing solo saxophone, they actually contributed to the music. Expose your kids to all of that. We're talking about comprehensiveness, thoroughness along the way. That's really what I think.
Any like actual, you know, musical, like technical tips?
Well, just take melodies and have them play the actual songs. You know, like you can have them take something as simple as "Happy Birthday" and put it in a swing groove. You know. Can we think about that tune like that? So you can just take basic nursery rhymes and things like that and have them play that. And Jazz at Lincoln Center and Wynton has put together a whole curriculum of that. If you look online at jazzatlincolncenter.org, we've recorded several units of things to help kids become more familiar with jazz and songs that they can learn. JALC.org. Just take a look online.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, his question we can say.
Wonderful tone. I was wondering, tenor, what the mouthpiece and reeds you might be using.
This is a public service announcement from Van Doren. This mouthpiece is a T7 by Van Doren. You know, and I use, on here, I have probably the red box of Van Doren's. I think they call Jazz now, right? The red box of Java? Java red box, 2.5. My reed's getting a little soft now. It's getting a little brighter than I like it to be, and the size is 2.5. You know, I don't like anything too hard. I like my reeds to be uniform across the board, because anytime one is too hard, then it throws the other ones off. It makes the others too soft, or vice versa. That's why I'm trying to get my clarinet reed kind of, you know, uniform in there. So that's kind of what I use on my mouthpiece. Yes, sir.
Has it been worked on at all, or is that just a stock mouthpiece?
It's just a stock. I have about 4 of them that I carry just in case. The other 3 get. Remember, I said you need to have 2 of everything.
What's the number on the tenor?
This is a 64,000 tenor Mark 6, Selma Mark 6 tenor saxophone. And what's so crazy about that? I was never into numbers and all. I used to have a Mark 7 for the longest, and repairmen they used to hate me because I walk in and say, "Can you repair my Mark 7?" And then they give me a lecture. And then I would fire back at them. I was like, if you'd like to give me a Mark 6, I would love to have one. I say, I'm playing the only horn I can afford right now, you know. And then in recent times, I've been lucky to cross paths with people who are selling horns. So I have 6 of them I've managed to acquire. I keep saying I'm gonna have a fire sale soon. Just let them all go. But it's kind of the horn for me, you know. But I mean, whatever horn you have, figure out how to be the best you can on that horn until you can get something else that you want to have that you at least believe make you sound better, you know. It may or may not. But yeah.
Same question about your clarinet.
This is the Festival Green line. I actually kind of joined the Buffet family about 1.5 years ago. Matter of fact, the last time I came here was when I first started working with Buffet. So my festival was a green line. It's interesting. I got it because traveling like we do, the green line is a composite of wood and some other kind of material they put together that prevents the clarinet from cracking. So being in all the different climates that I'm in, that was attractive to me. But I'm told also, don't let it fall over, because if it falls over, it'll shatter. You know, it won't crack, but it'll shatter. Pick your poison. But I like it. It's a good clarinet. It has. I used to play Selmas before this. I had a couple of Selma Series 10 Gs, and it was a more open tone. This was a much more streamlined sound, you know. So I'm still kind of, after 2 years, I'm still adjusting to the pros and cons of it. But it's a great clarinet. Buffet speaks for itself, you know. Yeah. I don't believe there's any such thing as a classical clarinet, a classical clarinet mouthpiece, a classical reed. You know, you got to get the sound that you want to get no matter what the equipment is. Some things are more conducive for playing that type of music. If you want to play the Ibert by, you know, the Concerto de Camera by Ibert, then probably a Selma C-Star will help you get closer to the sound of the people who have established a tradition of classical saxophone. But don't tell Joe Henderson that, because he played a Selma D. You know, that was the sound that he wanted, and he played it all his life, and as well as Mark Turner, who's a great tenor saxophonist out there now. You know, so it depends on what sound you want to have, and that will determine what kind of equipment you want to get. So, other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just on your woodwind journey, you say you started off on clarinet. So, what made you decide to move to the saxophone or flute or whatever have you?
Curiosity.
Yeah.
You know, when I was, even before I had a saxophone, I understood the fingering system of it and things like that. I was studying fingering charts of saxophone, oboe, clarinet, trumpet. Understand how they all do what they do is what I'm always interested in, you know. Knowing about the bass, you know, I used to practice it a lot. I don't practice it as much anymore. But I sit down and practice on the piano a lot because it's important to study my harmony there and have some skills there. But with the bass, you know, I used to work on bass line. Because if I understand more what he's doing when he's playing, then perhaps I can get closer to playing what he's hearing when he's playing. And, you know, I don't play any guitar. I've been threatening to buy a guitar, but that would just absorb time that I don't have. But I would get one anyway, just to have in the house. But to understand about that instrument as well. You know, I have a drum set at home. You would never want me to play the drums. I have no dexterity to play 4 limbs independently. But just to get there and understand what's going on with it. So I always want to understand what the other instruments are doing, and that's what made me branch out beyond the clarinet. The other thing, to be honest with you, too, that made me do it was that during that time we used to have what we call garage bands, funk bands, that kind of stuff. And when's the last time you ever saw a clarinet in a funk band? I rest my case. I mean, even when I learned Mr. Magic by Grover Washington, I learned it on the clarinet. It didn't have the same kind of impact. So, you know, other.
So did you learn what Sonny Rollins was playing on the Rolling Stones album that you played on too?
I don't know that one actually. Sonny would play with the Rolling Stones?
Yeah.
When was that recorded?
On the album. Waiting for a Friend, something like that, the album was out. Really?
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Sonny Rollins was supposed to play that.
When was it recorded?
About
79?
80, yeah, 80, early 80s, I'm going.
I might have to let that one escape me. I may have to just let that one get away. All right. Why don't we play something else for you, and then we can see what else comes up. What you guys want to play? That's a long one.
Yeah, I had done that in the road.
Is that a parrot in the house?
Yeah.
Like they keep whistling at us. It's okay. That's all right. This is a piece by Kenny Dorn. It's entitled Voice. Now you notice before we played this, I kind of went through it in my mind real soft because I have a thing about people who, I always tell my students, if you're gonna play a tune, you don't have to let everybody know that you have to figure it out. And a lot of times I end up playing tunes that I haven't played in a very long time, like Someday My Prince Will Come on. Whatever the tune is, but this is Voice by Kenny Barron. We haven't, obviously we've not played this together, but I haven't played this in a while. Okay. That's all right. One, two, two.
Thank you.
I could, but you know, I just
you know,
you know everything they got dirty blues, New Orleans music, rhythm and blues,
Yeah.
everything, you know. Like I used to play with Ruth Brown. You know who Ruth Brown is? Ruth Brown. Ruth Brown said before it was R&B, it was R&B still for Ruth Brown. And they said Atlantic Records was the house that Ruth built. She was responsible for establishing and putting them on the map. So we all know Ray Charles, right? But we forget that Ray Charles was actually opening for Ruth Brown. They had a little bit of that in the movie Ray, that she opened for Ruth Brown. So when I play, I bring everything to the table that Miss B taught me. You know that when I introduced her, I said Ruth Brown, but when I talk about her, I say Miss B, because that's how I feel about her. You know, I mean, we could, but that's not really, no disrespect, that's not the direction I'm coming from right today. You know, now somebody called me to do a gig, now I play with the Four Tops, the Temps, we've done gigs with Eric Clapton, Paul Simon, Bo Diddley, Freddie Cannon, the Sherelle. I knew Dick Clark personally. You know, I play with all those people. So each time I go to a gig, one thing Miss Brown taught me, she said, play the gig, baby. Like the first time I played with her, I started playing some Train I knew. She's like, honey, Train played with me. But when he played with me, he played my music. So when I go to a gig, I make sure I know what the gig calls for. You know? So, yeah, I could do that, but we're not really set up for that, you know? That's a certain setup that will call for. So no disrespect, again, I mean, I can appreciate the request, but the setup is not really conducive for it, you know? And the other thing I always say, though, is something, huh?
Could we do New Orleans?
Ooh, that's a hard tune. That's an unfamiliar tune to me. Hoagie Kobacker wrote some of the greatest tunes. Is that Hoagie's tune?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. That's a great tune on New Orleans. I don't think I know the bridge though. That don't make me know. So, what can I say? You know, well, what I was going to say about that though is like, it has always been amazing to me, especially in my generation and moving to the present, that when musicians have the opportunity to be really highlighted on the biggest stages, you know, especially the drummers seem like it. And somebody finally hired me and said, okay, man, we're going to put you on the stage in front of 50,000 people. They say, okay, let's play some funk. But you've been practicing jazz all your life. You know, play what you know. Because, first of all, the funk that you play is not going to be as funky as Maceo Parker and people who actually played funk, and James Brown's band and things like that. So, you know, the thing is it's cool to play all those different things, but no matter what it is you do, I don't have a problem with Kenny G and what he does. The only challenge I have with that is that they call it jazz. It's not jazz. When I hear him, I don't think it's Sidney Bechet. I started out with that statement long ago. Now, and I've met him a couple of times. Can he play the saxophone? Yeah, he can really play the saxophone. Check out his music with Jeff Lawler Fusion when he was Kenny Grodnick. That was his real name. And he just don't demonstrate those same talents on some of his more recent recordings. You know, but it's all good. Play whatever you want to play. And whatever you decide to play, play it with confidence. You know, don't play it like you don't really mean it, because there's enough people doing that. Be very, very dedicated to it. Now, you know, it's interesting. I have an extraordinary recorder. I listen all the time. It is a good thing I don't always know who's in the room with me, because I probably wouldn't play. I listen to so much Horace Silver. I met Horace. I used to go check him out in LA when I would go out to Marlon Gibbs's club. I can't remember the name of that club out there. But we have a gentleman who played with Horace Silver right there in the front room. And I didn't know he'd better. So I'm talking about Mr. Roger Humphreys. And he played on one of Horace's most popular recordings, entitled Song for My Father. In fact, more musicians have messed that tune up. Man, every time I have had a chance to play that tune with somebody, I say, okay, what's the form we're going to play? We're going to play AAB or AABA. And whatever form they call, they always play the opposite. And the form is always screwed up. So I appreciate you for coming today. And I feel like I should be quiet. You should talk now. Come learn some lessons. With great love and respect, thank you for coming. You know, that actually brings me to another story, because people always talk about what they like and what they don't like in music and songs that they like and don't like. And like for the longest, I used to always say, man, I don't really like songs from my father. And then I actually came upon the most profound discovery ever in my educational career. Why don't I like songs from my father? Because I don't play it well. The tunes that I like are the tunes that I think I play well. You know, I didn't even say I play them well. I think I play them well. So it made me go back and try to actually learn how to play songs from my father. I'm still practicing that too. I don't play in the public too often. And I'm not going to embarrass myself by playing it tonight. But it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Other questions y'all might have? Yes, sir, in fact.
That being said, you spoke to many saxophone players, and being a transplant from Pittsburgh, your thoughts, opinions, or influences of Stanley Turner?
The soulful Mr. T. He used to have a recording called After the Rain. Wynton Marsalis, who I grew up with also. I grew up with we went to kindergarten together. So I've known him a long time. And when I was really starting to get exposed to it, Branford turned me onto that record. I can still kind of remember the melody of the tune. I can remember things from 20 years ago as opposed to 20 minutes ago. That's a very important influence in me as well, because Stanley also was one of the first people who started taking those pop tunes and incorporating it inside of his repertoire. Like on that same recording, he had a recording of Earth, Wind & Fire's Reasons on it. I remember that on it, you know, and I transcribed both of them side by side. But also people overlook the serious aspect of when Stanley was deciding to play bebop on those Blue Note records and all of that kind of stuff, you know. He was fantastic tenor saxophone. I got to meet him too at a couple of events that we were on the same gig with Ruth Brown on. He was a great man, and obviously a great player. Fantastic, you know. Sir?
I remember when I was at Southern University in Baton Rouge, 81, 84, Mr. Marsalis used to bring around some gifted kids and travel them. I don't know if you were part of that, if you know what I'm talking about. But if you were, can you explain some of the experiences of all those gifted kids going around different places to just play? He would feature them to just do solos, but that was pretty impactful.
I wasn't one of those kids you're talking about, you know, but the gifted aspect for me was not so much what I could do, but it was about being around so many musicians who were willing to embrace me. You know, and Ellis is obviously one who is known world, you know, he's world renowned. But there were so many others like Fred Kemp, who used to play with Fats Domino. But he was into the music with Mr. Marsalis, and Red Tyler was another local figure who didn't really get out much, but they were really strong influences on me. There was another guy named David Lasty. That's Herlin Riley's uncle. And Herlin is from a very musical family. He had 3 uncles, David, Melvin, and the other one, they called him Papi. I don't know his real name. But just to know those kind of people and be in their presence. Earl Turberton is another one, if you know Earl Turberton. Willie T, he had a brother who played piano that I hung around. And they're all Ellis Marsalis' age, and most of them are deceased now. But just to have been in their presence and the way they embraced me. There was a great drummer from New Orleans who's still alive. He had a stroke. He doesn't play anymore. Named Smokey Johnson. Smokey Johnson was the guy who, when Detroit and the Motown sound was coming along, they say Smokey would do what 2 drummers did at that time. And just to have the opportunity to be around them and learn from them in what most people would consider to be a less than formal setting, but that was actually more informative and educational to me than actually being in the classroom, because they would give you the true lessons. You know, so when I'm teaching in my university setting, I try to give my students what I got in these other settings over here, of being at a jam session and playing with Billy Higgins, you know, or talking to Jimmy Cobb. You know, I got to speak to Ray Brown before he died. You know, I hit him at Juilliard when I taught there, and I remember talking to him. was like, "Hey, how you doing, Victor?" Yeah, Mr. Brown. Wow, I got Ray Brown on the phone. Like, yeah, this is him. You know, but those kind of experiences, you know. So that was where I feel I was gifted at, in the fact that I was privileged to be around these other great musicians. I don't think I was ever really in that gifted and talented bunch. I just worked really hard, man. You know, like I went to bed at 1 o'clock last night due to my own fault. I hung out. But I got up at 7 o'clock this morning because there's things to be done. You know, we had a rehearsal from 10:30 to 1. I'm here from 3 to 5. We got a concert at 7. I got to do some preparation for tomorrow. I get on 6 a.m. flight. I got a 2:30 lecture. I got an 8 o'clock gig tomorrow night. Then we do the same thing on Monday. And then we fly to New York. We have a week of rehearsals with Joshua Redmond and the big band. And so my target date is like Sunday, October 28th. And then when I get back to Evanston, Illinois, I have a concert with my students at 3 o'clock. I get in at 8 in the morning. So my goal is to get to October 28th at 6 o'clock. Then I can go to sleep without anybody wanting anything. So that's like, you know, but about the gifted and talented thing, you know. I wasn't really in that category of kid. I just worked really hard. I'm not gonna come last in a race, and I don't plan to be the weakest link in the chain. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to be a stronger link. Other questions, thoughts?
Victor, given the time, I think you might want to play one more, we'll get you up.
Okay, well, we have one more question in the back.
I was just gonna ask, is there a difference in your playing compared to when you're leading your own group as opposed to being a sideman with somebody else? You mentioned a bunch of the groups you play with.
That's a good question, you know. Well, Duke used to always say, be a number one yourself, not a number two somebody else. Actually, his teacher would say that, Will Marion Cook. And Monk used to have a statement that he made. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's about being, jazz allows us to be the best of who we are. You know, so when I'm playing with other people, sometimes I have to try to accommodate their needs and desires and wants on the gig. But for the most part, when I play, I have a chance to be myself. And the gigs that I get to be associated with allow me to be myself. In fact, I would hope that all the gigs that call me because they want me to be me and not somebody else. So I'm always trying to play me, but at the same time, make sure that the music or what I'm playing fits the vibe of what's going on. Because I got like thousands of quotes that I use to teach with. And one comes to mind. Wynton Marsalis did a video called "The Music Tells You." And you know, many times people will superimpose this on top of that till it ultimately loses its identity. But with the music, if you're willing to listen to it and really listen to it, it will tell you what it's asking. It has a direct message it's trying to send you. So when we're playing in a big band, most times people are looking for published type of dynamics and things to do. But if you listen to the music, if the whole sax section is playing and there's a trombone solo, it's probably going to be a piano situation. You know, the music is talking to me to tell me play softer because that other person is highlighting. So when I play with other people, I try to maintain my own identity along the way, inside of whatever style of music that is. If it's funk music, I'll play funk, but with my own identity of it. If it's jazz, so be it. If I'm called to play clarinet, classical clarinet part, I'll try to bring the tradition of what I know about classical clarinet playing to the stage and at the same time expressing in my own voice. Because that's the only voice I can give with a certain amount of authenticity. Everything else is going to be a copy of somebody else. And that, you know, why should people pay for that? They go get the recording and hear the authentic recording of that. But they should get the original copy of me. All right. So what should we conclude with, gentlemen?
Some Blue Monk.
Some Blue Monk. With Keith. very much. I want y'all to thank Mark again for. I travel all over the country and all over the world, and I tell people constantly, man, you have to get to St. Louis and come to Saxquest. This guy has a museum upstairs. It is amazing. So y'all have a phenomenal place here. I hope you understand the value of it. I hope you spread the word. I hope you get people to come out and not only come and check out things, but support it. Because I'm sure sometimes it gets a little lean, and he can use more people coming through the store. But you want to make sure you recognize what you have while it's here, as opposed to when it's gone. Okay? So support Saxquest, and thank you all very much. My name is Victor Goines.